The cavern trembled with a violence that suggested imminent collapse. Hairline fractures spider-webbed across reinforced ceramic walls, each crack a potential harbinger of total destruction. Captain Area Chen stood motionless, her neural implants processing geological data streams faster than any conventional computer could comprehend. Her left eye, a marvel of biosynthetic engineering, flickered with holographic displays, mapping the complex stress lines threading through kilometers of rock and compressed metals. Resonance frequency is destabilizing, a voice echoed through her mind. It was Dr. Kummel Rosenberg, the colony's chief geoengineer, communicating directly through their shared neural network. We've got approximately 17 minutes before complete structural failure. 17 minutes. In the history of human survival, that was an eternity. Chen's fingers, augmented with micro-quantum processors, danced across a holographic interface that seemed to materialize from the air itself. Thousands of nanite swarms lay dormant throughout the cavern's infrastructure, each microscopic machine a potential savior or destroyer depending on the precision of their activation sequence. The colony had not been built, it had been grown. Embedded within layers of artificial stone and living metal were complex biosystems that responded to threat like an organism defending itself. Generations of genetic engineering and technological innovation had transformed human habitation from mere construction to a living, breathing entity. Around her, the first wave of evacuation was already in motion. But this was no panicked exodus. Each movement was calculated, precise. Children as young as 8 interfaced directly with evacuation protocols, their enhanced neural pathways guiding entire family units through escape routes that shifted and reformed in real time. Initiate Lazarus Protocol. Chen subvocalized. A low hum began to resonate through the cavern. Not a sound, but a vibration that penetrated molecular structures. The rock itself seemed to take a breath. Muscles of stone and synthetic material preparing for transformation. Camille's voice cut through her concentration. The last geological survey suggested these instabilities were impossible. Something is triggering them externally. Chen's augmented perception caught the subtle implications. External trigger meant potential threat, not just a natural disaster, but possibly an intentional attack. The colony's defensive mechanisms weren't just about survival, but about maintaining the last repository of human potential. The nanite swarms activated. What appeared to be solid stone began to flow like liquid, reinforcement structures emerging from within the rock itself. Stress points redistributed, molecular bonds realigning with a precision that defied conventional physics. The entire cavern was becoming a living shield, adapting faster than any conventional defensive system could. A holographic display materialized before Chen, showing multiple layers of data, geological stress maps intertwined with population movement patterns, quantum probability projections dancing alongside real-time structural integrity reports. This was more than crisis management. This was survival as an art form. 3 minutes into the process, the first external probe detected. Something was indeed watching. A sensor signature unlike anything in their current database. Chen's enhanced perception parsed the data, recognizing patterns that suggested technological sophistication beyond their current understanding. "We're being observed," she transmitted to the colony's leadership council. "Prepare defensive countermeasures, but do not, I repeat, do not initiate aggressive response." The colony's children continued their evacuation, moving with an almost choreographed precision. Their genetic modifications weren't just about physical enhancement, but about creating a collective intelligence that could respond to threats with unprecedented coordination. As the cavern continued its metamorphosis, Chen reflected on the journey that brought them here. Generations of genetic refinement, technological innovation born from the crucible of near extinction, had transformed humanity into something both familiar and utterly alien. The external probe continued its observation. Whatever was watching would soon learn that humanity was far from a defeated species. They were an evolving force that turned survival into an art of continuous transformation. Deep within the colony's quantum communication hub, Dr. Marcus Wong operated in a state of pure computational symbiosis. His workspace wasn't a room, but a living neural interface that extended beyond physical boundaries. Holographic data streams swirled around him like cosmic winds, each thread of information a potential weapon in humanity's most intricate battle. The captured Zorn communication drone lay dissected across multiple quantum-entangled workstations. It was more than a piece of technology. It was a Rosetta Stone of galactic communication, its every circuit and quantum processor a potential key to undermining an entire imperial infrastructure. Interesting, Wong muttered, though the sound was more a neural pulse than actual vocalization. A microscopic anomaly in the drone's communication encryption revealed something far more profound than a simple communication protocol. It was a linguistic trap, a sophisticated system designed to subtly manipulate communication across species. Captain Chen materialized in the workspace, not physically, but as a high-resolution holographic projection. Her presence carried a weight that transcended traditional leadership. "What have you found?" Wong's response was a burst of complex data that transformed the space around them. Holographic models of communication networks bloomed like fractal landscapes, revealing intricate vulnerabilities. The Zorn's communication system wasn't just a network, it was a rigid hierarchical structure with predictable failure points. "They've built an empire on the illusion of perfect communication," Wong explained, his thoughts manifesting as dynamic visual representations. "But every hierarchical system has inherent weaknesses. Their strength is also their most significant vulnerability." The plan they were developing was nothing short of revolutionary. Instead of a direct assault, they would weaponize information itself. Each transmission would be a carefully crafted piece of psychological warfare, designed to create cascading uncertainty within the Zorn Imperium's communication infrastructure. A junior analyst, a young woman named Aria Nakamura, whose genetic modifications allowed her to process complex communication patterns at unprecedented speeds, interrupted the strategic session. Her neural interface projected a series of complex mathematical sequences that seemed to dance between linguistic patterns and quantum probabilities. "Look at the communication timestamps," she said, her voice a blend of excitement and analytical precision. "There's a rhythm to their imperial communications, not just a pattern, but a kind of linguistic DNA that reveals their entire societal structure." Wong's holographic representation zoomed into the data, revealing subtle frequency modulations that most species would never detect. "It's like they're broadcasting their entire societal blueprint with every transmission they make." Captain Chen's strategic mind began to assemble the pieces. "We don't just want to disrupt their communication. We want to make them question the very foundations of their civilization." The team began constructing what would become known as the Chimera Protocols, a series of communication interventions so subtle and complex that they would appear almost like natural phenomena to the Zorn. Each transmission was a carefully designed virus of doubt, engineered to exploit the most fundamental assumptions of their imperial communication system. Nakamura isolated a specific frequency band that seemed to carry administrative communications. With a series of quantum-encrypted interventions, they could introduce microscopic variations that would slowly erode the Zorn's confidence in their own infrastructure. "It's not about destroying their communication," Wong explained, his holographic form shifting to demonstrate the concept. "It's about making them lose faith in their own systems. Uncertainty is a far more powerful weapon than any physical assault." The quantum communication hub wasn't just a room. It was a living organism of strategic potential. Adaptive algorithms learned and evolved with each simulation, creating communication strategies that would become increasingly sophisticated. Captain Chen recognized the profound nature of their approach. This wasn't just a military strategy. It was a form of cultural jiu-jitsu, using the Zorn Imperium's own communication strengths against itself. By the time they realized what was happening, the foundations of their civilization would already be shifting beneath their feet. As the first carefully crafted transmission prepared to launch, there was a sense of anticipation, not of violence, but of a complex, almost artistic intervention that would redefine the concept of warfare. The spark of rebellion had been ignited, not with a weapon, but with a message. The Zorn scout ship's sensors went haywire the moment it breached the planet's atmospheric boundary. What should have been a routine reconnaissance mission transformed into something entirely incomprehensible. Pilot-Navigator Krulax gripped the primary control interface, his four-fingered hands trembling as holographic warnings cascaded across the view screen. The planet's surface didn't just resist scanning. It seemed to be actively communicating with the ship's systems, creating recursive feedback loops that defied every known principle of planetary interaction. What appeared to be a simple rocky landscape began to shift, not in the way of traditional terraforming or geological movement, but with a fluidity that suggested conscious intent. Crystalline structures emerged from what moments ago had been solid stone, forming intricate networks that pulsed with an internal luminescence. These weren't just geological formations, they were living communication arrays that seemed to breathe with intellectual purpose. A young human child stood at the edge of what could only be described as a technological ecosystem. Her name was Zora Chen, a 12-year-old who represented the pinnacle of human evolutionary adaptation. Unlike the genetic modifications of previous generations, Zora's capabilities transcended simple enhancement. She was a living interface, her neural pathways so advanced that she could communicate simultaneously with the planetary infrastructure, the scout ship systems, and the complex biosynthetic networks surrounding her. When Krulax activated the scout ship's primary communication array, something unprecedented happened. Instead of receiving a standard planetary response, the entire communication spectrum became a living dialogue. Mathematical sequences danced across his screens, transforming from simple data streams into complex narrative patterns that seemed to tell a story. The story of human survival, adaptation, and transformation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching from a hidden observation point, understood the true nature of what was unfolding. This wasn't just a technological demonstration. It was a first contact scenario designed to communicate volumes of information in a language that transcended traditional communication methods. Zora's eyes, one organic, one a sophisticated biosynthetic implant, tracked the scout ship's movements with preternatural precision. Her mere presence seemed to influence the surrounding environment. Nanite swarms that had been dormant in the planetary crust began to activate, creating complex architectural structures that merged seamlessly with the natural landscape. The scout ship's internal systems began to decrypt themselves, not through any external hacking, but through a process that suggested the ship itself was becoming aware, its technological infrastructure engaging in a dialogue with the planetary network. Firewalls dissolved. Encryption protocols became transparent, revealing layer after layer of technological complexity. Krulax realized with growing terror that they were no longer observing. They were being observed. A holographic interface materialized within the ship's command center. It wasn't a standard communication protocol, but a living, adaptive representation that seemed to understand Krulax's cognitive patterns in real time. Complex scientific and cultural information began to stream, not as static data, but as immersive experiences that bypassed traditional language barriers. The planetary surface continued its transformation. What had appeared to be simple rock formations revealed themselves as sophisticated adaptive infrastructures. Defensive systems didn't just protect, they anticipated, evolved, and communicated. Each molecular structure contained potential for immediate reconfiguration, turning the entire planet into a living, thinking entity. Dr. Rodriguez's voice echoed through the quantum communication network. This is more than first contact. This is a demonstration of what humanity has become. Zara stepped forward, her movement causing ripples in the surrounding technological ecosystem. With a gesture that was part neural command, part artistic expression, she initiated a comprehensive data transfer. The scout ship systems were flooded not with technical information, but with the essence of human experience. Generations of struggle, adaptation, and collective evolution compressed into a multi-dimensional communication event. Krelax understood then that humanity was no longer a species to be categorized or understood through traditional scientific observation. They had become something else entirely, a living, adaptive intelligence that could transform entire planetary systems into extensions of their collective consciousness. The scout ship would return, but it would return fundamentally changed, carrying a message that would shake the foundations of the Zorn Imperium's understanding of intelligent life. Humanity was back, and they were nothing like anyone expected. Deep within the quantum resonance chamber, Dr. Imani Okoro stood at the epicenter of humanity's most audacious technological achievement. The quantum resonance network wasn't just a communication system. It was a living, predictive intelligence that redefined the very concept of information transfer. Holographic matrices swirled around her, each strand representing potential futures, probabilistic outcomes dancing in a hyperdimensional ballet that would drive most minds to madness. But Imani was different. Her consciousness had been carefully expanded, her neural pathways augmented to interface directly with the quantum probability fields that formed the network's core. Initiating harmonic cascade, she whispered, though the words were more a neural command than actual sound. The chamber responded. Walls composed of metamaterials began to shift, their molecular structures realigning to create a perfect quantum resonance chamber. Each surface became a computational node, processing information at speeds that made traditional supercomputers look like abacuses. A single transmission began to take shape, not a message in any traditional sense, but a complex mathematical pattern that was simultaneously a communication, a weapon, and a living piece of adaptive intelligence. The pattern would travel through the Zorn Imperium's communication networks like a quantum ghost, invisible yet profoundly transformative. Dr. Marcus Wong entered the chamber, his augmented perception allowing him to see the transmission's potential trajectories. "We're not just sending a message," he explained to the team monitoring the operation. "We're creating a probabilistic infection that will systematically undermine their entire technological infrastructure." The transmission was a masterpiece of information warfare. It contained multiple layers of complexity, a mathematical sequence that would slowly destabilize the Zorn's communication encryption, a subtle adaptive algorithm that could replicate and modify itself within their network, a predictive model that could anticipate and manipulate their strategic decision-making processes. Outside the chamber, the colony's children watched with a mixture of scientific curiosity and collective anticipation. They understood this wasn't just a military operation. It was an evolutionary statement. Zara Chen, the young girl who had previously interfaced with the Zorn scout ship, stood at the periphery of the quantum chamber. Her augmented perception allowed her to see the transmission's potential futures, branching paths of probability that most minds couldn't comprehend. "It's beautiful," she murmured, watching the quantum matrices unfold. The transmission began to propagate. Unlike traditional communication methods, this was a living intelligence that could adapt, learn, and transform in real time. It would move through the Zorn Imperium's networks like a quantum phantom, invisible yet profoundly disruptive. Dr. Okoro's consciousness expanded, interfacing directly with the transmission. She became more than an operator. She became the living bridge between human intention and quantum potential. Her mind parsed millions of potential outcomes, selecting and guiding the transmission's most effective path. In financial centers across Zorn-controlled systems, market algorithms began to behave erratically. Communication networks developed inexplicable latencies. Military strategic projections became increasingly unreliable. None of these disruptions seemed connected, yet they were all subtle manifestations of the quantum transmission. "First stage integration complete," Wong announced, his voice a blend of scientific precision and barely contained excitement. The transmission was more than a message. It was a form of technological acupuncture, targeting the most critical pressure points of the Zorn Imperium's technological infrastructure. Each interaction would create cascading uncertainties, slowly eroding their confidence and strategic capabilities. Captain Area Chen watched from the command center, understanding the profound nature of what they were doing. This wasn't destruction. It was a form of technological evolution, a way of demonstrating that humanity had transcended traditional concepts of warfare and communication. As the quantum transmission continued its silent propagation, the team understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. They weren't just sending a message to the Zorn Imperium. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of interstellar communication and conflict. The quantum ghost continued its journey, invisible yet unstoppable, a living testament to humanity's extraordinary potential for adaptation and transformation. The first support package arrived on Krellmine, a mining colony buried beneath the toxic atmosphere of a resource-stripped planet. What appeared to be a simple data transmission was, in reality, a complete technological ecosystem compressed into a quantum-encrypted package. HFY, a third-generation mining worker from the planet's lowest caste, received the package through a hidden quantum-entangled communication node. Her hands trembled as the first lines of code began to unfold, not as mere instructions, but as a living blueprint of technological liberation. The package wasn't a weapon. It was far more dangerous. It was knowledge. Within hours, the mining colony's antiquated extraction systems began to transform. Nanite swarms emerged from dormant maintenance channels, reconfiguring molecular structures with surgical precision. Automated mining rigs that had been designed for maximum exploitation now became adaptive terraforming units, capable of not just extracting resources, but of healing the planetary wounds inflicted by generations of imperial strip mining. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the human colony's central monitoring station, her augmented perception tracking the package's evolution across multiple star systems. This wasn't traditional warfare. It was a form of technological guerrilla empowerment. Terraforming protocols activated, she murmured, watching holographic displays that showed the cascading technological transformation. On another world, a subjugated agricultural colony received its own package. Their archaic irrigation systems, designed to keep the population perpetually dependent, began to reconfigure. Crop management algorithms developed sentience, optimizing not just for imperial resource extraction, but for the holistic health of the planet and its inhabitants. Marcus Wong entered the monitoring room, his neural interface displaying complex probability matrices. "We're not just providing technology," he explained. "We're providing a complete paradigm of technological autonomy." Each support package was a carefully crafted ecosystem of knowledge. They contained adaptive technological blueprints, self-evolving infrastructure algorithms, educational modules that could be integrated directly into local communication networks, quantum-encrypted communication protocols that allowed colonized species to communicate securely. The Zorn Imperium's control had always been maintained through technological suppression. By controlling access to advanced technologies, they kept subjugated species in a perpetual state of dependency. Humanity's approach was radically different: total technological emancipation. On the methane-rich world of Trell, a mining cooperative received their package. Their antiquated communication systems transformed overnight. What had been a rigid, monitored network became a dynamic, self-organizing communication ecosystem. Workers could now share information, coordinate, and develop strategies without imperial oversight. Zara Chen, the young prodigy who had become the symbolic face of humanity's technological revolution, monitored the transformations. Her augmented perception could track the subtle ripple effects of each technological intervention. "It's like watching an organism grow," she told Captain Arya Chen. "Each package is a seed of potential, not just a piece of technology." The human strategy targeted the most fundamental imperial control mechanism: technological dependency. By providing complete, adaptive technological ecosystems, they were giving subjugated species the tools to reimagine their entire social and economic structures. A communication intercept revealed the growing panic within the Zorn Imperium's administrative centers. Their monitoring systems were going dark, not through direct attacks, but through a process of technological evolution that rendered their control mechanisms obsolete. Dr. Imani Okoro analyzed the initial response patterns. "They don't understand," she noted. They're treating these transformations as technological failures, not realizing it's a complete paradigm shift. Each support package was a quantum-encrypted message of hope. More than just technology, they were complete philosophical and technological frameworks that allowed subjugated species to reimagine their potential. The uprising wasn't about violence. It was about possibility. As the transformations continued across multiple star systems, it became clear that humanity was doing something unprecedented. They weren't conquering. They were liberating, one quantum-encrypted package at a time. The Zorn Imperium was about to learn that true revolution doesn't come from weapons, but from knowledge. The Zorn Imperial War Council convened in their most secure communication chamber, a massive spherical room constructed from quantum-dampening materials designed to prevent any external interference. High Commander Zelnak surveyed the holographic battle projections, his 4 eyes moving independently to track multiple strategic displays. Something was wrong. The battle plans that had been meticulously crafted over generations now seemed to shimmer with uncertainty. Strategic algorithms that had never failed before began to produce increasingly erratic projections. What appeared to be a simple military assault was transforming into a nightmare of cascading probabilities. Lieutenant Krelax, the scout who had first encountered the human colony, stood at the periphery of the council chamber. His earlier report had been dismissed as an anomaly, but now a creeping sense of dread began to fill the room. The holographic displays didn't just show potential battle scenarios. They seemed to be alive, shifting and breathing with an intelligence that defied conventional military logic. Captain Arya Chen observed the Zorn's strategic center through a quantum-entangled surveillance network. What the Zorn saw as a conventional military assault was actually a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. Every holographic projection, every communication channel, every strategic algorithm was being subtly influenced. Dr. Marcus Wong explained the strategy to the human leadership team. "We're not just disrupting their communication," he said, his neural interface displaying complex probability matrices. "We're attacking their fundamental perception of reality." The psychological warfare had multiple layers. 1. Holographic deception. Human technology could generate entire fleet projections that existed in a quantum state between reality and illusion. Zorn military commanders would see massive human fleet deployments that both existed and didn't exist simultaneously. 2. Cognitive resonance disruption. Specialized quantum algorithms were designed to introduce microscopic uncertainties into the Zorn's decision-making processes. Military leaders would find themselves second-guessing every strategic choice, their confidence eroding with each passing moment. 3. Adaptive misinformation. The human team had developed an AI system that could generate perfectly tailored misinformation, adapting in real time to the Zorn's cognitive patterns and cultural communication nuances. Zara Chen, the young prodigy who had become integral to the strategic operations, monitored the psychological battlefield. Her augmented perception could track the subtle emotional and cognitive shifts happening across the Zorn's communication networks. "It's like watching a complex emotional ecosystem," she told her mother. "We're not just fighting. We're transforming their entire conceptual understanding of conflict." In the Zorn Imperial War Chamber, High Commander Zelnax watched in growing horror as their most sophisticated communication networks began to behave in increasingly unpredictable ways. Fleet deployments that should have been precise became fluid, almost organic in their movement. One of the senior strategists suggested a direct assault. The moment the words left his mouth, the holographic displays erupted into a kaleidoscope of potential scenarios, each more confusing than the last. What should have been a simple strategic projection became a living, breathing entity of uncertainty. The psychological attack wasn't just about confusion. It was about systematically dismantling the Zorn's collective confidence. Every communication channel became a potential source of doubt. Every strategic projection became a labyrinth of uncertainty. Dr. Imani Okoro, monitoring the psychological warfare from the human colony, noted the precise cognitive erosion happening in real time. "We're not destroying them," she explained to her team. We're making them destroy themselves through their own rigid thinking. Holographic representations of human fleets would appear and disappear, existing in a quantum state that defied traditional military understanding. A Zorn battleship might target what appeared to be a massive human fleet, only to find nothing there, or everything there, depending on the precise moment of observation. The most terrifying aspect was the complete unpredictability. The Zorn military had built its entire strategic doctrine on absolute certainty. Now that certainty was being systematically dismantled, not through conventional warfare, but through a form of cognitive jujitsu that turned their own systems against them. As the psychological warfare continued, it became clear that this was more than a military conflict. This was a fundamental challenge to the Zorn's entire conceptual understanding of strategic engagement. Humanity was fighting a war not of weapons, but of perception. The void between star systems erupted into a canvas of impossible geometry. The Zorn Imperium's entire fleet converged, a massive armada that should have been an overwhelming display of military might. Instead, it became a testament to the limits of conventional warfare. Admiral Zelnak stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominance, his four hands gripping command interfaces that no longer responded with their previous certainty. What should have been a straightforward assault had transformed into a nightmare of quantum uncertainty. Human ships didn't appear where they were expected. They existed in states of probabilistic potential, simultaneously present and absent, threat and illusion. Each vessel was more than a weapon system. They were living cognitive interfaces, adaptive intelligence that could reconfigure faster than thought. Captain Area Chen commanded from a neural interface that transcended traditional bridge concepts. Her consciousness spread across multiple quantum-entangled systems, each projection a potential strategic vector. She wasn't just commanding a fleet, she was becoming the fleet. Initiate quantum cascade, she transmitted, a command that was simultaneously a mathematical equation, a strategic directive, and a living piece of adaptive intelligence. The human vessels began to move in patterns that defied traditional spatial understanding. They folded space around themselves, creating interference patterns that made targeting impossible. Defensive systems weren't just reactive. They were predictive, anticipating Zorn attack vectors before they could even be conceived. Dr. Imani Okoro managed the battle's cognitive landscape from a separate quantum resonance chamber. Her role wasn't traditional fleet coordination, but total strategic manipulation. She was orchestrating a conflict that existed as much in perception as in physical space. Their decision trees are collapsing, she noted to Marcus Wong, who monitored the psychological battlefield. Each Zorn strategic decision was being systematically undermined, not through direct confrontation, but through a form of cognitive entropy. The battle became a three-dimensional chess match where the board itself was alive, changing with each potential move. Zorn weapon systems would target a human vessel, only to find the space reconfiguring milliseconds before impact. Entire squadrons found themselves trapped in recursive probability loops, their tactical algorithms consuming themselves in endless strategic recursion. Zara Chen, now fully integrated into the battle's quantum network, represented humanity's evolutionary potential. Her augmented consciousness could track millions of potential battle scenarios simultaneously. She wasn't just observing the conflict, she was helping shape its fundamental nature. "They're trying to fight the last war," she transmitted to the fleet. "We're fighting the next evolution of conflict." The Zorn Imperium's greatest weakness emerged, their absolute belief in hierarchical control and predictable systems. Each of their strategic decisions became a vulnerability, a point of entry for human cognitive manipulation. Military units that had trained for generations found themselves paralyzed by uncertainty. Holographic projections became weapons. Quantum communication channels transformed into cognitive minefields. The very concept of military engagement was being rewritten in real time. Admiral Zelmax watched in growing horror as his fleet's most sophisticated systems began to consume themselves. Communication networks turned into recursive loops. Weapon targeting systems developed what could only be described as existential confusion. It wasn't that the human fleet was defeating them. The humans were making them defeat themselves. The space between vessels became a living battlefield of perception. Human ships would momentarily exist in multiple locations, their quantum signatures creating interference patterns that scrambled Zorn sensor systems. What appeared to be a single vessel could simultaneously represent a threat, a decoy, and a communication node. Dr. Marcus Wong's final strategic overlay revealed the true nature of the conflict. This wasn't just a military engagement. It was a comprehensive demonstration of evolutionary potential. Humanity showing that conflict itself could be transformed into a form of communication. As the battle reached its crescendo, it became clear that humanity was fighting something far more profound than a traditional war. They were challenging the fundamental understanding of strategic engagement, of technological potential, of the very nature of conflict itself. The Zorn Imperium's fleet began to collapse not from external damage, but from internal cognitive dissonance. Each system, each decision, each moment of strategic planning became a potential point of failure. Humanity wasn't conquering. They were evolving, and inviting the galaxy to evolve with them. The Galactic Reconstruction Summit convened on a neutral space station that defied traditional architectural concepts. Its structure was a living testament to adaptive design. Walls that could reconfigure, spaces that breathed with collective intelligence, an environment that was as much a communication platform as it was a physical location. Captain Area Chen stood at the center of the assembly, no longer representing a single species, but embodying a new paradigm of interstellar cooperation. Around her, representatives from dozens of species watched with a mixture of apprehension and hope. The defeat of the Zorn Imperium was more than a military victory. It was an opportunity to reimagine galactic civilization. Zara Chen, now a diplomatic prodigy whose cognitive capabilities exceeded traditional understanding, served as the primary translator. But translation was too simple a word. She was creating living bridges of understanding. Her neural interfaces capable of communicating not just language, but entire cultural contexts. "We're not here to replace one system of control with another," Area explained. Her words simultaneously translated through multiple communication matrices. "We're here to create a collaborative ecosystem of potential." Dr. Marcus Wong presented the first comprehensive reconstruction framework. It wasn't a traditional policy document, but a dynamic adaptive protocol that could evolve in real time based on collective input. Each species could contribute to the framework, their unique perspectives becoming integral to the galactic redesign. The reconstruction plan had several key principles. 1. Technological democratization. No species would be denied access to critical technologies. The quantum communication packages that had been instrumental in the conflict would now be used to uplift and empower. 2. Adaptive governance. Traditional hierarchical systems would be replaced by dynamic, responsive networks that could rapidly adapt to changing galactic conditions. 3. Cultural preservation. Each species' unique cultural identity would be not just protected, but celebrated as a critical component of galactic diversity. Dr. Imani Okoro unveiled the most radical proposal, a shared quantum communication network that would allow instantaneous, nuanced communication across vast distances. This wasn't just a technological solution, but a philosophical platform for collective understanding. Representatives from previously subjugated species spoke, their voices no longer constrained by imperial suppression. A mining species from the toxic world of Krell-9 shared how the technological support packages had transformed their entire civilization. An agricultural collective described how they had redesigned their entire planetary ecosystem. The station itself seemed to listen, its adaptive architecture responding to the emotional and intellectual currents of the discussion. Holographic representations would emerge, illustrating complex points, creating visual metaphors that transcended linguistic barriers. "Humanity isn't proposing leadership," Zora explained during a particularly tense moment. "We're proposing partnership. Each species has evolved unique capabilities that are critical to our collective survival." The reconstruction wasn't just about rebuilding. It was about reimagining the fundamental principles of interstellar civilization. Traditional concepts of resources, governance, and technological development were being fundamentally challenged. A representative from a silicon-based species presented a proposal for adaptive resource management that would have been impossible under the Zorn Imperium. Another delegate shared a communication protocol that could bridge biological communication differences between species that had previously been considered incompatible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been instrumental in developing the initial support packages, presented a comprehensive ecological restoration framework. It wasn't just about healing planetary ecosystems, but about creating adaptive systems that could evolve alongside the species inhabiting them. The most profound moment came when the representatives of the Zorn Imperium, now stripped of their previous hierarchical power, were invited to contribute. Their initial hesitation gave way to a remarkable realization. They were being offered not punishment, but an opportunity for fundamental transformation. "We're not erasing the past," Aria Chen said, her voice resonating through the quantum communication network. "We're creating a platform for collective becoming." As the summit progressed, it became clear that this was more than a political meeting. It was the birth of a new understanding of collective potential. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had opened a door to a new way of existing. The space station hummed with possibility, a living metaphor for the galactic civilization being born in that very moment.